Bill, and I entirely endorse what my friend, my noble friend, Baroness Smith of Newnham has said to the House today. Being pro-life for a woman and a child, believing in the right to life as a human right, does not make people into misogynist bigots, and they should not be caricatured as such. During the passage of the 22 Animal Welfare Sentience Act, I wrote that it left a gaping hole because of the lack of any comparable mechanism for the consideration of the human fetus, the point that the noble Lord made earlier. C.S. Lewis, in supporting the Anti-Vivisection Society, said, and I agree, that if you start by being cruel to animals, you'll end up being cruel to human beings as well. And it's that incongruity and how we treat the most vulnerable of our own species that is close to my heart, and I make no apology for that. In the 18th century, Jeremy Bentham, who argued the relevance of pain was not dependent on the ability to think rationally, but rather to feel as animals can do. In 1789, he wrote, I quote, "The question is not, can they reason, nor can they talk, but can they suffer?" There's an analogy here with fetal sentience, one which emerged in two ad hoc inquiries held in Parliament and which I took part in, one chaired by the late Lord Rawlinson of Ewell, the former Solicitor General. We said that, like a newborn infant, a fetus may not be rational in the way an older child or adult is, but if there are grounds to believe the child in the womb may be able to suffer, we have a responsibility to do what we can to minimise such suffering. If we're uncertain about the exact point and by how much an unborn baby suffers, we should always err on the side of caution. Now, the noble Lord Moylan, I think by implication, referenced Professor John Wyatt, who has 3 decades of experience treating extremely premature babies, including a large number born at 22 or 23 weeks, below the current abortion time limit. A few years ago, when addressing parliamentarians in what I thought was sobering evidence, Professor Wyatt told us that there was a link between what the fetus and premature babies experience. And he said, and I quote, "I think from my observation of extremely premature babies that they are sentient, they are conscious, and they are responsive to their environment." So, my lords, why should we care? First, this is a human rights issue. The preamble to the United Nations Convention on the Rights of a Child, to which the UK as a signatory, states that the child, and I quote, "needs special safeguards and care, including appropriate legal protection before," please note, before as well as after birth. So we have obligations which must be honoured. And how will we do this without expert research or guidance policy? And secondly, barbaric discriminatory legislation does permit abortion, as we've heard from the noble Lord, Lord Rowbotham, in some cases up to and even during birth. In the case of Down syndrome, it was World Down Syndrome Day yesterday. Clubfoot, cleft lip and palate. After 20 weeks, the NHS recommends, as the noble Baroness told us, the use of analgesics when performing fetal surgery on babies with spina bifida, but pain relief is not mandatory for feticide abortions. Noble Lords should study the recommendations of the UN Committee on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities and attempts in the other place, in one instance to increase the opportunities of abortion right up to birth in all cases, and in another to lower the abortion time limit from 24 to 22 weeks, in line with the increase in survival rates of babies born at 22 and 23 weeks. I'd also gently point out that as long ago as 1988, I succeeded in the House of Commons in persuading 296 MPs to vote for my bill to reduce the upper time limit to 18 weeks, a majority of 45, the Swedish upper time limit. It would have saved the lives of some of the 10 million babies who have been aborted in Britain, but it was talked out by opponents. The case today is even more compelling, and please note the EU average upper time limit is around 12 weeks, with many parliaments greatly influenced by the question of sentience and pain. In other areas of medicine, the precautionary principle is often applied, the idea that where there's uncertainty, we should err on the side of caution. So it seems to me that we ought to be prudent about this when it comes to fetal sentience. Let me end with Professor Wyatt again, his words. "I think we should play safe. We should give the fetus the benefit of the doubt. We should assume that it's capable of experiencing pain and unpleasant sensations, and we should then treat the fetus appropriately, which would, if necessary, be with strong pain relief, medication, or with anaesthesia. So, my lords, this is both sensible and humane. The Foetal Sentience Committee, which is all that the noble Lord Moylan is asking us to support today, would enable us to increase our understanding in this area. And yes, I therefore commend the bill to the House, and I gently say to my friend, the noble Baroness Lady Kennedy of the Shores, that Article 3 of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights says everyone has the right to life. Supporting that does not